It is rare that I speak in front of such an important audience. I see here the people who are going to defeat global warming. Global warming is not an illness, it's not a disease, it's a war. It's the enemy, and we're going to fight it. And being at the expo this morning and looking at what's going on and looking at you here, we're going to win. Now, let me take a moment to get my computer working. Today, I'm going to emphasize things that I'm going to avoid talking about things you already know. What I want to do is say things that are absolutely obvious, but perhaps were not obvious until you hear them. So that will be my theme. I know many of you are very expert in this field, and I will try to go quickly. It's a huge field, and in my 20 minutes, I will try to tell you what's going to be important while moving forward in order to defeat this enemy. This is global warming. These are measurements that were analyzed by a group that was founded by me and my daughter at a time when I was a skeptic. And we brought together some of the best data analysts in the world to take the world's data, scrape it off the internet, and do an analysis. Now, I was a skeptic. And after we did this, we found global warming is real. Many people said, ho-hum, I already knew that. And we can show that it was caused by humans. If there's anybody in this audience who doesn't believe that, I doubt that. But if you have friends and colleagues and important people who don't believe it, I am the best person to convince them, like the ex-alcoholic who runs Alcoholics Anonymous. I am the ex-skeptic who knows all the arguments of the skeptics, and in our study, we explicitly addressed them, and we are now widely cited in the IPCC reports. So global warming is real, and we have failed. This is a record of the carbon dioxide from 1960s until now, when Keeling started making the measurements. And this rise was going up, and I became interested in this subject in the 1980s. There were these major reports of the IPCC. Now you might say they were successful because it might have gone like that. But it's very disappointing that we have not done better than this. Why? Is it because we haven't been trying? I'm going to go through my understanding and explanation for what we have been doing wrong. And I hope this will serve as guidance for the future. Here in Korea, I am seeing wonderful things. And I'm dazzled. As someone who knows the technology, I am dazzled by what I have seen at this expo so far. It is wonderful. And yet, there are mistakes that lie ahead that we must avoid. As a favorite quote of mine attributed to Albert Einstein, the definition of insanity is repeating the same mistakes over and over and expecting different results. So we want to make sure what mistakes we made in the past, we don't continue to mistake. Enthusiasm and energy are not going to be enough. So I have what I call my 12 commandments of low carbon. Nickname is the 12 bewares. The word beware is tricky to translate to other languages because it's more than just be careful. You can be careful not to slip on a puddle. But beware is if you learn that a tiger has been released in your house, then you need to beware. So it has a great power in the English language that's not easily treated. And I'm going to give you the 12 bewares. Beware 1. We must get into a mode of problem solving. That means not a mode of blaming. If you want to blame me for global warming, please, let's get it over with. Let's ascribe the blame and then stop blaming. You can blame the industrialized world, the United States, the OECD. Good, blame them. Now stop blaming. The goal now is to stop global warming, to solving that problem. And we have to focus on problem solving. And here is the challenge. This shows a projection. I published this. This was in the Wall Street Journal some years ago. And it showed a projection of what was going to happen in carbon dioxide. And that's frightening, because carbon dioxide and the other greenhouse gases are indeed responsible. Human-emitted carbon dioxide is responsible for global warming. That I can convince any skeptic of, if that skeptic will listen to me. But here is the expected contribution from the developed world. And if we cut that to 0, then we will be on this curve, the red one, instead of on the black one. In other words, we will not stop global warming by ourselves. We must develop our technologies in such a way that the developing world will endorse them, will use them, will adopt them, will do so without subsidies. If we don't, if the United States and Europe and Korea, if we drop our emissions from here to here, so where there's 0, and then we are only on the rise of the developing world. Now, I am very much in favor of the rise of the developing world. Personally, I would love to see the entire world having the standard of living that we now have in Korea, in the United States, and Europe. That is a goal that we must support. Well, you don't must support it, but I support it. And that's going to take more energy. And if all that happens is that energy is coal, as it is now, and natural gas, and other carbon emitters, we will not stop global warming by cutting carbon emissions in the developed world. We will only delay it by 1 year. I never see this mentioned anywhere. It's very important. Whatever technologies we develop, we must keep in mind by saying, will they be developed? Will they be used in the developing world? In the IPCC report, most of the global warming in the future is going to come from the developing world as it develops. And that means we have to help them develop their economies at an even faster rate by using clean energy. So, think globally, but act locally. But when you're acting locally, don't stop thinking globally. Keep in mind that whatever you do locally must impact the entire world. Not enough to reduce carbon yourself. You must reduce the carbon of the developing world. You must be, if you develop a technology, it must be one that's going to bring down the cost enough so the developing world will want to use it. Either that, or it has to be low enough cost already. I summarize this in beware number 3. If it isn't profitable, it isn't sustainable. A shorthand for that is whatever technology you're developing to produce energy, it must be cheaper than coal. The developing world has many problems other than global warming. They have poverty, hunger, education. They need lights at night so their young children can do homework and read in the evening. These are very serious problems that we in the developed world just take for granted. So I put it this way: whatever technology you're developing, can you make it cheaper than coal? Because if you make it cheaper than coal, the developing world will adopt it instead of coal. And we will put an end to global warming in a much shorter time than by doing anything else. Beware advocating discomfort and sacrifice. One of the errors made by a U.S. president, President Jimmy Carter, was he told Americans that we needed to, in winter, turn down the thermostat so it'd be chilly in our homes, but put on a sweater. Make a sacrifice for the good of the world. Now, what he should have said was, add more insulation in your walls, turn up the thermostat to anything you want, but you will save energy and you will save money by putting more insulation in the walls. Many people did what Jimmy Carter asked. They put on sweaters, they turned to their thermostats, and they became non-supporters of future energy conservation. Energy conservation, green energy, can be done in a comfortable way, and we need to do it that way. Virtual signaling. This one is one I see all over in the United States, where somebody wants to know, what can I do? And what I tell them is support your politicians who are acting with a vision of the world. But people want to do things. They will eat the food they choose or something. They will compost their gardens so they feel that they're doing something. But that doesn't really advance the problem, which, as I said, is to make green energy inexpensive enough that the developing world will endorse it and use it with enthusiasm. The subsidy illusion. In California, we subsidize solar energy, and much of that is well spent because it can drive the cost of solar energy down. But some of it is spent subsidizing large solar thermal plants, in which I, as a technology person, don't see any way the cost will come down. They are bricks and concrete. And building them makes us feel good, but subsidizing it doesn't really achieve anything because the cost will not come down. So beware of that. And don't just develop technologies because they're clean and have money in them because they're clean. We need to develop clean energy that can be used and will be adopted around the world. Optimism bias is an odd one. I talked about this in my 2016 book, Energy for Future Presidents. Optimum bias means that you believe that the technology world can solve any problem except the ones you don't like. So if you don't like nuclear, they'll never make it safe. They'll never make it cheap. But if you say, what about solar? Oh, it's coming down. We have smart people. They can solve these problems. They can make it cheaper than coal. What about the need for backups? Batteries. Batteries are a major cost for intermittent energy. Oh, yes, we'll get better batteries. Just put our tech teams on it. What about nuclear? Oh, we can't solve those problems. This is an optimism bias. You're optimistic about things you choose and pessimistic about other things you choose. Beware of that. It can mislead you. An example here is the carbon tax. I'm probably the only person who is truly, deeply concerned about global warming who does not think a carbon tax will solve the problem. And the reason is a carbon tax will raise the cost of energy. The government doesn't take any, it's neutral to the government, but you put a carbon tax on dirty energy and people are forced then to buy clean energy. Now that works if it drives the cost of clean energy lower, but not that it won't always happen. And in the developing world, they cannot afford a carbon tax because they can't afford more expensive energy. Some things really work. When I go to the developing world, I see that they are using compact fluorescent light bulbs and light-emitting diodes more than we are in the United States. And that's because it costs less energy. Electricity is expensive in the developing world. And they will get these lights because they are so much more efficient. So I see that, but that has to be the key. Regulatory uncertainty. This has been the biggest problem in the United States. The government and industry have acted as adversaries. I have seen this in so many things. I believe that the reason Korea leads the world in the development of nuclear power, and it does, is because your industry works together with your government to problem solve. Whereas so often in the United States, our government impedes the development of a technology. It's decided it doesn't like nuclear, and so we have regulations in the United States that are terrible and not changed. What I see happening here today is not just business taking on global warming, but a coalition of business and government, and half of the responsibility is in the government. You have a tradition in Korea, which we don't have in the United States, of having this coalition really work. And you serve as an example. And it's one of the reasons I'm at this conference, is just to understand this better and cajole the United States and other countries to doing a similar thing. I've said this before. For the developing world, we need energy affordability. That's the key. Clean energy affordability. What I would like to see at the Expo is every booth explain how their approach will work, not in Korea, not in Busan, but will work in the developing world, in Africa, in the poorer parts of Asia, in Latin America. And that's, I didn't see at this Expo. And I would like to see that, because that is the key to really solving the problem. Capacity factor illusion, I just mentioned this quickly because you will often hear that this solar plant has a capacity of 100 megawatts. But it's only on 29% of the time because there's nighttime, morning and evening, and cloud cover. The world average is that a solar power plant that has a peak capacity of 100 megawatts on the average only delivers 29 megawatts. And batteries are very expensive. I saw some batteries today that I find very exciting at the Expo. We've got to bring the cost down. I think the lithium-ion battery is not going to be the key here. Lithium-ion is what you need if you need a portable cell phone, something that's lightweight, but other kinds of batteries, to develop these to use as backup for solar is what's going to make solar and wind really more effective. And there's this anti-nuclear bias. It is changing, as was mentioned earlier. Things are getting much, much better. When I got into this nuclear business 6 years ago, the issue was that there are all these problems here, and none of them hold up now. I'll mention a few of them. The two biggest impediments, well, there were accidents. There were three impediments. There was accidents, there was cost, and there was the unsolved nuclear waste problem. But this is what you do in Korea. It's one of the cheapest forms of energy. And I believe this comes about because of cooperation between the government and industry. And it's a wonderful thing, and the world has to adopt it. And I'd love to see the United States adopt it. And I can tell you all about the problems in the United States that impede this. But that's not the purpose of my talk today, and I don't have the time in any case. This is a new point. I didn't see anything in the expo for this. But we can offer 150 countries around the world energy independence, not just clean energy, but independent energy. Korea has a natural resource that is not being exploited. You are surrounded by uranium. It's in the seawater. And the technology for taking it out of seawater is reaching a highly advanced stage. And it will not be done by industry alone because it costs 5 times as much to do. And so you cannot sell this on the open market because ordinary uranium is cheaper. But the cost of the uranium that goes into a nuclear power plant is only 2% of the cost. And if that becomes 10% of the cost, it's still not very important. This is a China's demonstration of a plant to extract uranium from the oceans. I think this is the future. I think countries around the world, certainly Korea has this as a natural resource. You have plenty of coastline, and you could extract it from around the world. I didn't see any programs here at the Expo on extracting uranium because it's not competitive. And this is where a coalition between the government, which has an interest in energy security and energy independence, and not depending on other countries for their uranium, this is where the government has to play a major role, and then industry can come in and support that. So yes, it can be done. It now costs 5 times as much to get uranium this way, but that price can come way down. Accidents, the new small nuclear reactors. Every major nuclear accident that has occurred from Chernobyl to Fukushima has come about because of a nuclear meltdown. And these new nuclear reactors are highly resistant to meltdown. Some of them have fuel that just can't melt. Even if you were to put them in a furnace, they can't melt. They're refractory. Others have cooling systems where the cooling system depends only on gravity. Full disclosure, I have invented a nuclear reactor, a company called Geofission, that we put 1.5 kilometers underground. It has 1.5 kilometers of water above it. It is so deep that the pressure is given by the water column, not by a pressure plant. I'm not going to talk more about my nuclear reactor, but I'm very excited by it. Nuclear waste. I say the unsolved problem of nuclear waste. Well, it's not unsolved, it's solved. You have programs here in Korea that will work. There are programs around the world that will work. We're putting nuclear waste underground at the WIP facility in the United States. It's only allowed by law to put down not commercial nuclear waste. That has to go to the closed Yucca Mountain. We have this law in the United States that nuclear waste from commercial plants must go to Yucca Mountain. Meanwhile, Yucca Mountain was closed, first by the Democrats, then by the Republicans. It's not going to reopen. So by law, we have no place to put nuclear waste. So we're storing it by the reactors. Full disclosure, I have also created another company that will store and dispose of nuclear waste in deep boreholes. And this company has been going on for 6 years, and we would love to work closer with Korea on this. We have a dozen other countries. We've been talking with people in Korea about this, but we're about to do a demonstration, and we'd love to have Korea be part of that. But enough of my own advertising. There is a fear of invention, and this is a bigger one than you might think. If you come up with a new kind of nuclear reactor and people are developing another one, they don't want to hear about a new kind of nuclear reactor. What if it's cheaper? What if it's better? It'll put them out of business. And they can't change very easily because of the way the government works. It's a long time frame. And finally, let's see what we have here. Don't wait for the US. Oh, this is a problem I come across, particularly in Europe, where people say, well, if your inventions are not approved in the United States, we're going to wait until they are. The United States is the slowest country in the world. I would say, if you want an example, follow Korea, not the United States. We need to change. We delay things, we hold things up, we make it very hard. It's beginning to change and get better, but it's only beginning to change. So, quick review of what I said. We've had 30 years of failure, and we have to address the developing world. We have to find solutions that are cheaper than coal. Industry and government working together, that's what I think this conference is about. That's what I see as the future. We've had 30 years of failure. We have my 12 bewares, things, traps you can fall into that will stop you from solving the problem. They may make you feel good, but you won't solve global warming. And with that, I will end and say, please contact me if you have any. I'll be happy to send these slides. If you want to copy the slides from me directly, hand me your business card and put down send slides. And I will send a copy of these slides to you. And thank you very much for your attention.